In the beginning, God spoke and the universe began to take shape. When God created humanity, rather than speak, God scooped up a mound of dirt and breathed. God speaks and galaxies form, and yet he saves his very breath for humanity. There is a place before the face of God where, in our postmodern, post-secular culture, if we slow down long enough and gaze into the Father's eyes, we can catch a glimpse of who we truly are. It's important to remember God does not bless who we pretend to be, nor does he bless who people perceive us to be. No, God blesses who we were created to be. And because of that, every single person on the planet is of utmost intrinsic value. But tragically, many people today do not feel that way. Our world needs reintroduced to hope. In our common human experience today, each one of us share a historic setback. The events of the previous 2 years have shaped our generation. For the first time in 20 years, the percentage of the world's population living in poverty has increased, and that number represents an additional 119 million people. Gains in education, agency, autonomy, and civil society, frankly, are gone. Arcane ideologies, geopolitical fractures, the exploitation of the disadvantaged, inequity, and perhaps for me personally the most troubling is mere human indifference. These, among many, are some of the contributive factors. And when hopelessness abounds, people do unspeakable things. I spoke with a father in Southeast Asia who sold his oldest daughter to buy food to feed the rest of his family. When you walk among the refugee camps filled with Venezuelans and nations such as Brazil and Colombia, you will notice a trend. Many of the women and the girls, they shave their heads. Why? They're selling their hair to buy food. Right here in the United States, parents choose between, and I quote, paying my bills or buying groceries for the kids. 38 million Americans are food insecure. 12 million of them are children. To a child who is hungry, not only in Bangladesh or Ethiopia, but right here in the United States, hope shows up through a plate of food. So, what is hope? And does it really matter? Plato viewed hope as rational. Aristotle taught it takes courage. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy teaches that hope has two primary components. One, there's a cognitive dimension, but secondly, a conative one. And although these insights are very beneficial for all of us, Judeo-Christian scripture invites us to understand the transformative impact of hope in a deeper sense. What we do know is this: hope is not whimsical. It is a fundamental human need. And I would propose it is also a human right. Hope is a place the human soul comes to, where what we see, regardless of our experience, is not all that there is. It impacted the ancient Hebrew patriarch Abraham this way: against all hope, Abraham in hope believed, and he became. The Hebrew word tikva is translated into English as hope. Tikva first is mentioned in the Bible in Joshua chapter 2. A group of Israeli soldiers are conducting a reconnaissance in and around the ancient city of Jericho. Upon their discovery, they hide to save their lives in the home of a prostitute named Rahab. She allows them to escape out of a window using a tightly woven cord. As they flee, they instruct her, allow the cord to remain visible in your window. When we come back in and invade your city, everyone in the home where the rope is visible will be kept safe. That rope was a symbol that a promise made after a period of waiting will ultimately be a promise kept. And for Rahab and her family, it was. When you read Joshua 2, however, you'll notice in the English translation, the word hope is not found. That's because the word tikva is translated as cord. Metaphorically speaking, hope is a tightly woven cord that when tethered to something strong and sure, it always gets you where you need to go if you hold on tight enough. Rahab married an Israeli. They had a son named Boaz. Boaz married Ruth. Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus of Nazareth, is a descendant of hers. The conquest of Joshua in the ancient city of Jericho, the protection of Rahab and her entire family, the redemptive story that we read about in the ancient book of Ruth, and the very home that Jesus of Nazareth grew up in are all tethered to Rahab's hope. Hope seems unreasonable, and at times for many of us it is irrational. And although hope and hopelessness are divergent, they are certainly not competitive. When our hope is tethered to the one who scoops up a mound of dirt and breathes, bringing life, innovation, beauty, and creativity out of nothing, our hope serves also as a symbol that a promise made will always be a promise kept. Hope is semiotic. And at Convoy of Hope, this is our experience day after day, especially right now in 8 nations in Eastern Europe where we serve refugees pouring out of Ukraine. The World Bank says Ukraine's economy this year alone will shrink by 45%. Half of the nation's children are displaced. What does hope look like when someone flees Ukraine? Well, for many, hope looks like food and water and a place of shelter and safety. But what about the Roma? The Roma, because of their ethnicity in Eastern Europe, are marginalized and stigmatized. And as they flee the war in Ukraine, they watch family after family board a bus, board a train, somebody greets them with food and water, and the Roma, we found, stand there. No one wants to talk to them. No one wants to touch them. And as refugees leave Ukraine, hoping for a better day, the Roma have absolutely no hope. Why? Because they are ignored and forgotten. To the Roma fleeing Ukraine, this is what hope looks like. This is Ronaldo. Ronaldo takes a bus to Ukraine's border day after day, and guess who he looks for? He looks for the forgotten ones, the ones that seldom have anybody reach out to them. They are the Roma. They board the bus. They are transported to churches and homes of Christians where they receive food and water and hope and the potential for a better day. For the Roma fleeing Ukraine, hope shows up in the form of a bus. The Sahel is a strip 4,000 miles long in sub-Saharan Africa. In the months of May, June, July, and August, 12 months worth of rain fall in those 4 months. The months of October and November in the villages are filled with singing and dancing and celebration as every single family member enjoys a luxurious 2 meals per day. In December, the families begin to conserve food. And by the time February rolls around, every single person lives on 1 meal a day. In March, the children become sick and ill. Why? Because they're hungry and malnourished. And in April, both at dusk and twilight, if you listen, you'll hear the cries of babies and infants because they cannot get comfortable. They cannot sleep because they have nothing of substance to place into their stomachs. And then inevitably it will happen. Village after village, hut after hut, there is a symbol of hope where a father will go to the shelf and take a bag of seed and do the unthinkable. He will take their last remaining grain and throw it into the dry and arid dirt. Why? Because he knows that soon the rains are coming, and that means shortly after that, the harvest. In the Sahel, that cord draped out of the window looks like a bag of seed. I often travel to some of the most desolate places on the earth, and I've gazed into the eyes of war-shocked refugees, and I've wrapped my arms around men who have leprosy that no one will talk to. And I've held children who suffer from severe acute malnutrition, and I've observed up close and personal the injustice many women experience simply because of their gender. And I can tell you unequivocally that the solution, it may seem elusive and it may be difficult to measure scientifically, but it is real. It is more real than anything you can wrap your hands around, and it is the power of hope. And if you need hope today, I challenge you, slow down long enough to notice that cord draped out of your window. Because for you, regardless of how you think and feel, a promise made by God is always a promise kept. And if you would like to bring hope to someone else, refuse to be successful in life at what, in the end, does not matter. And resist the seductive convenience of memorizing Jesus, and instead do the hard work and become like him. Thank you.